Hello children, welcome to social science class. So as we revised yesterday about the emergence of new dynasties, so as the continuation we are going to see about the general administration which have been done on that particular 7th century. So here the many of these new kings were adopted in high sounding titles, that is about, so you may know, so for example when a leader was appointed in the classroom, so how she will behave, she'll make a like boss, isn't it? So here so many kings who were adopted as they are high sounding titles, that means they will show that they are big king, and they'll be showing that they are the important soundings, like, isn't it? So they themselves give the title for themselves. So here are the title for the kings which have been given down with the example. So here is a name named as Maharaja Adi Raja, and here he has given as the title as great king, or he is called as overlord of kings. And then another one example, that is of Tribhuvana Chakravartin. So he was given the title as lord of the three worlds. So here these two kings are the examples of, you can see the examples of Samantha. So here what they do, here let us see the difference between these two kings. So here, in spite of such heavy titles, so they have given the heavy titles here, right? Like great king or overlord of kings or lord of the three worlds. So even though in spite of such heavy titles, what they do, these kings were not completely powerful. So here these kings were not completely powerful, it seems. So they often share their power with the Samantas and the association of traders. Traders means one who come from the next country or next region, like, okay. So here the association of traders, peasants and brahmanas. So here what they did, they shared the power with the Samantas who were there, and they associated with the traders. That means they'll show the power with the traders and with the peasants and with the brahmanas. So these are the things they did. Who are there? The high sounding person who are named as Maharaja Adi Raja and Tribhuvana Chakravartin, right? So here let us see what they did. So what they did is about, they did the revenue. So here let us learn what do you mean by revenue here. Revenue was also collected from the traders. So what kind of revenue they have collected? So for what purpose they collected this revenue is about. So here revenue is about the income. So as they are collecting the taxes or something else from the traders, peasants, like, isn't it? So that is known as revenue. So here this gives the source and what are the uses and how they collected. So all these things we are going to learn now. So here practices related to revenue were almost similar in most states. So here the collecting of revenues are similar. Similar means same in all the states, isn't it? So here they are saying the resources were obtained from producers. Resources means what? The main thing, the money, the tax, isn't it? So they were obtained from the producers. Producers means one who produces the new things. It's like from whom and all they are collecting these revenues, from the peasants, from the cattle keepers and from the artisans. So here what they have to do is they had to pay a part of their produce. So what they have to do, so as they are producing new things like rice or wheat or something, drawings or sculpture, whatever they are doing, they have to pay a part. Part means, for example, they are doing 4 things, means they have to give 1 thing to the this king. So that is the main thing. It was named as revenue there. Then sometimes the produce was also collected as rent, because the king owned the land. So here as they are producing so many things, isn't it? So when you produce the new things, as they can give the one part to the king, or else what they have to do is they have to pay the rent for the particular thing, and because they are owning the land. So here the revenue was collected from also the traders. So traders means one who come from the next place or from the next country. So here revenue was also collected from those traders. So the next thing we are going to see about what will they do as they are collecting the revenue. No? So what are the things they'll do with these revenues? That means what are the resources they'll do. So here these resources were used to, as they are collecting the money from the traders, from the peasants, from the cattle keepers, from the producers, right? So what they'll do is they'll collect and keep it, and for what purpose they'll use it. So here they'll finance the king's establishment. For example, if there is any poor people in the kingdom, so what they'll do, they'll build a house in that particular money, or they'll build a forts. Forts means you all know, na? Kote. In Tamil they'll tell it as kote. So forts and temples, they'll build the temples with it. And for example, they have to fight with the other country or with the other place, they'll use this revenue money. So yeah, to fight the wars. So for these three things, they'll be using the revenues which they have collected from several people. So here fighting wars leads to acquisition of new wealth. So here while they are fighting for wars, what they'll do, they'll use that thing to buy. Acquisition means to buy something or to get something from the wealthy people. That means, for example, from one place to another place. If they are fighting war, they are making war means to get all those things from the next kingdom, isn't it? So that is the main thing they'll do in the wars. So what are the things they'll do? They'll get the more land, more trade routes. So all these things will be collected from the wealthiest place. So these are the resources they collected. So I'll show you in simple for what they are doing the war. So what was the main purpose of war wealth? So here, for example, if the king won wars, what will happen? Then they got control over more land, resources, even for trade routes, isn't it? For example, as we are there now as a king, we have won that particular place. So we can move on to the next place because we have the trade routes, because we are the owner of that particular place, isn't it? So here same thing, if the king won the wars, then they got control over more land and with the resources, and they'll become the trade routes, and this lead to more wealth. So what will happen if the trade routes have been done? The traders will be going on from one place to another place, and they are producing their things. Means what will happen? This will give them more money, isn't it? So that this will lead them to become a more wealthiness, isn't it? So what will happen when they get the more wealth? They'll be funded for more wars. So they have to offer the revenue for that, isn't it? So these are the things continuously happen during the war wealth. So therefore, winning wars could lead to more wealth, which was used to find the fun more in wars. So these are the continuation which was happening over there. Then the next thing, what is the uses? So what is the uses means, what is the uses of collecting the revenue? So here, generally people from influential family. What do you mean by influential family? Means it's like well-known person. So for example, in such place, a well-known person will be there, and well-versed person in wealthiness. So from those families, what they'll be doing is they'll be appointed as the particular revenue leader, and they'll be collecting the revenue from the several people. Okay, so these posts were often hereditary. What do you mean by hereditary? The gene, isn't it? So in Tamil we'll tell it as parambaraiyaga, right? So here this hereditary will be going on done. Often it will be going on done. So for this post, only the hereditary person will be appointed there. So this was also true for the armies. For the armies also, they'll be posting the hereditary people. So close relatives of the king held high posts. So here, if the particular person was a close relative to the king, so what they'll do, so they'll appoint the high post in the kingdom. So this was usually happening in all things, isn't it? So we saw the general administration which have been owned by two kings. Who are there by the two kings, isn't it? Who are the kings? Maharaja Adi Raja and Tribhuvana Chakravartin. So they have given soundings like, as they were adopted as a sounding like great king or overlord of kings and lord of three worlds. So they have, what are the activities they'll do? They'll be sharing the power with only the Samantas and the association of traders, peasants and brahmanas, because the brahmanas were changed into, they left their ritual practices and they become to work for the kingdom, isn't it? So here they associate with the traders as well as with the peasants as well as with the brahmanas, and after that they started collecting the revenue from the traders. So what are the what do you mean by revenue we saw, and what are the sources for regarding that we saw that, right? So from where and all, for to whom and all they'll be collecting, and how they'll produce it, and for what purpose they'll use that money, isn't it? So these resources were used to, so what are the purpose they used the revenue, and what is the war wealth. So we learnt about how it goes on, we learnt about, and we learnt about the uses of collecting, and who are the person will be appointed for certain jobs, and for example how they are selected. So these are the things we learnt in general administration. Now take page 18 in your NCERT book. So here you can see that 400 taxes, the inscriptions means we'll tell it in as the written thing in the stone or whatever else, isn't it? So in the olden days they may be writing something in the stones, isn't it? So here the inscriptions of the Cholas who ruled in Tamil Nadu refer to more than 400 terms for different kinds of taxes. So here they used 400 terms for the different kinds of taxes. So we all know in the Chola period itself they collected the different kinds of taxes for different things. So here the most frequently mentioned tax is vetti, it seems. So it was taken not in cash. So here what they did, they collected the tax named as vetti, but not like a cash. So what is the thing they're doing? But in the form of forced labor. So as they are collecting the things from the forced labor, that for example in those days we'll tell it as adimaigal, na? So those person what they'll do, they'll be doing continuously work. So they are forced to become a labor. And kadamai, so they'll tell it as kadamai or land revenue. So they have to stay there and they have to work for the king, isn't it? So they were also taxes on thatching the house. What do you mean by thatching the house? For example, if they are building the house with the roof or whatever else, so for that also they'll be using the taxes. Then the use of a ladder to climb palm trees, for these also they paid the tax. And a cession to family property. So cess means what? Cess means a tax. So they paid a tax for the section of the family property. So are any such taxes collected today? So for each and everything we are paying the tax today. So when we go to the road, or as we all need to buy a mobile phone or whatever else, so for all the purpose we are paying the tax to the government, isn't it? So today we learned the lesson about the general administration in the 7th century, which have been done by the king, by the two kings, isn't it? So I think you all listen to this class. So kindly I'll post these headings, subheadings in your Google Classroom. Kindly go through it and copy this in your rough work and just learn it. So just read page 17 and 18 regarding this general administration. Thank you, dear children.